Hi, I'm Darryn Farrugia and welcome. In this week's video, I'm going to talk about what seems to be a fairly normal, natural subject when it comes to drumming, opening the hi-hat, but there are things that we can actually get wrong. So hopefully I'm going to be able to sort that out for you. And also I'm going to show you where you can open the hi-hat. So let's get stuck into it. So in today's video, I'm going to be playing eighth notes on the hi-hat, not 16th notes, just eighth notes. And so all the open hi-hat sounds would either be an eighth note or longer in length. I'll talk about the longer one towards the end. So there are a couple of things we need to consider. Firstly, there are a number of places we can open the hi-hat. What you heard me play in the beginning of the video is a very typical opening of the hi-hat on the and of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Before we get into those variations and when to open the hi-hat, I want to talk to you a little bit about the technique. Now I know it doesn't seem like a technical issue, but to some degree it can be. So what I do when I'm opening the hi-hat for an eighth note in length is I rock back down to the heel and I open the hi-hat with the front part of my foot. So I'm constantly keeping my heel down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. If I try to lift my entire leg off the floor for the length of an eighth note, it's just going to throw my body out of balance. Because I'm having to hold my leg up for an extended length of time, then I need to counterbalance by basically throwing my weight back in this direction. So when I'm playing the hi-hat and I'm opening it for the length of an eighth note or longer, I will just use the heel down technique for that. Example would be if I was playing 16th notes and opening the hi-hat for the length of a 16th note, I could open it with my heel up, and that makes a lot of sense because I don't have to hold my leg up too long. 1, 2, 3, 4. So when I play that, I can comfortably play that heel up. But if I'm playing an open hi-hat that's an eighth note in length or longer, as I mentioned before, it's heel down. Now, some time ago, I was practicing a groove, which was basically just a simple eighth note groove with the open hi-hat on the and of 4, just like you heard me play at the start of this video. And there was something about it that was bugging me. It just did not feel right. Beat 1 felt like it was always sort of arriving too soon. And with some investigation, I figured out what was going on. I was actually closing my hi-hat just a fraction too early. And it was because of how much I have the hi-hats open. This is going to seem a bit weird, right? But if I play a groove and open the hi-hat on the 4 and, then that means the hi-hat is going to close on beat 1, which is occurring at the same time that I'm playing a bass drum note on beat 1. So effectively, beat 1 becomes a unison between the left foot and the right foot. I'm closing the hi-hat with my heel down, hitting the bass drum on beat 1, heel up. It doesn't matter if it's heel down. The point that I'm trying to make is that that unison on beat 1, left foot and right foot, needs to be exact. And what I noticed was happening was that my hi-hat was closing just a fraction before my right foot was playing on beat 1 or before the bass drum was landing on beat 1. And so what I did to counter that problem was I adjusted how much my hi-hats are open. That's really not open as much as I would normally have it. So I found that if I opened it just a little bit further, now that seems like a lot, and a lot of my students come here and play and the first thing they do is close the hi-hats, but I like to have them quite wide open. So what I would do then is just practice playing quarter notes with my left foot and right foot, making sure that there are no flams occurring and making sure that my left foot doesn't close before my right foot lands on the bass drum. So a thing to practice with this would just be So I'm rocking my heel down, up, down, up, down, up, down. In this case, playing the quarter notes on the bass drum with my heel up. What I'm looking for is ensuring that there are no flams. So what I had to do is make sure that the gap between my open hi-hats is a little further so that when I close the hi-hat, it doesn't close before the bass drum has sounded. So I want that unison to be exact. So experiment with the amount of open hi-hat you get. So just undo your clutch and work out exactly where that's going to be. If you are going to create a bigger gap between the hi-hats, then back off the tension on the pedal. I have my hi-hats, fairly wide open, and the tension on the pedal's actually quite soft. So, experiment with that. But it's an interesting idea that could create such a problem, and that could make the groove kind of feel a bit weird because the hi-hat's closing just that fraction too early. Anyway, something for you to consider. The next thing I want to talk about is whether to hit the hi-hat at the same time that you close it. So there are two approaches here. I'm going to play eighth notes on the hi-hat, I'm going to open it on the and of 4, and I'm not going to hit beat 1. So beat 1 is basically just going to be my left foot closing the hi-hat. Here we go, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you do that, you eliminate the possibility of playing a flam on beat 1 if your left foot and right hand don't land at the same time. If it's a habit for you to play beat 1 when you close the hi-hats, then I would suggest that you just make sure you practice, or at least be aware that there could be a flam when you close the hi-hat with your foot and the right hand hitting the hi-hat. That's what you want to avoid. So we open the hi-hat on the and of 4. Another position to open the hi-hat is on the and of 3, and this became really popular in the 1990s when the acid jazz grooves became really popular, and there were a lot of beats that kind of had that open hi-hat on the and of 3. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. So that's the hi-hat opening on the and of 3. Okay, here's another question I get. Which part of the stick do I use to play the open hi-hat? It kind of depends on the dynamic or the type of sound that you're going for on the hi-hat. If I'm playing the hi-hat with the shoulder of the stick, chances are I'll open the hi-hat with the shoulder of the stick as well. Generally speaking, I do like the sound of the hi-hat being opened and played with the shoulder of the stick, but you can experiment. What happens if I play the hi-hat with the tip of the stick and open the hi-hat with the tip of the stick? Let me try that again. Hi-hat with the tip of the stick, accent with the shoulder of the stick. So you can experiment with that. There are no hard and fast rules. You just need to find an approach and a sound that is appropriate to the groove that you're playing. Generally speaking, I like the sound of the hi-hats opening played with the shoulder of the stick. So we've opened the hi-hat on the and of 4, we've opened the hi-hat on the and of 3. Now another kind of funky approach to opening the hi-hat is on the and of beat 1, and you'll hear this type of approach in some James Brown grooves. Let me play something for you, you'll get the idea of what I'm talking about. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I would say that those three positions are probably the most common hi-hat openings for the upbeat, so for the ands. So what I'll do now is demonstrate a hi-hat opening that occurs on the downbeat. So in this case, I'm going to open the hi-hat on the downbeat of beat 1 and close it on the and of 1. So let me just isolate the hi-hat and play that for you first. 1, 2, 3, 4. I really like playing that. I don't get to play that often enough, but when I do, it's a fun approach. It really puts so much weight and emphasis on beat 1. And you hear the great funk masters talking about the heavy beat 1. That's one way to achieve that. So while we're talking about beat 1, I'm going to play an open hi-hat on beat 1 again, but this time I'm going to increase the length of that open hi-hat for the entire beat 1. So now, as I mentioned at the very start of this video, we're going to open the hi-hat for the length of a quarter note. So I'm going to open it on beat 1 and I'm going to close it on beat 2. And again, now more than ever, you really need to make sure that you're playing with your heel down so that you don't lose your balance, because otherwise you're going to be holding your leg up in midair for an entire beat. So this is how this is going to sound. This is just the hi-hat first. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there you go. There are a few different positions that you can open the hi-hat on, and more importantly is the technique. So have a think about those things I said. Playing with the heel down when you are opening the hi-hat for a length of an eighth note or longer so that you don't lose your balance. Have a think about the distance between the cymbals on your hi-hat stand. I also talked about which part of the stick to use when you're opening your hi-hat. Do you play it with the shoulder of the stick or the tip of the stick? Personally, I like the shoulder of the stick. And finally, I also talked about whether you should play the hi-hat note where the hi-hat is closing, or do you allow the hi-hat to close without the right hand playing at the same time? A lot of stuff to take in. So food for thought. If you like the video, hit the like button. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, and remember to hit the notification button so that you know when I've uploaded a video, which is every week. So until next week, have a great week. Give this some thought. Have fun opening those hats, because it's groovy, and always be groovy in life. Have a great week. See you soon. Bye.